I think that's okay. How do I do this again? Like thumbnail. Does that look stupid? Let's see how that goes. Morning. My name is Christina. Welcome to my home. I'm sorry, if I'm looking that way, the neighbor across the road is doing their roof, and so they're throwing all their like old shingles down, and it keeps looking like there's a really big bird or something flying off their roof, but really it's just old roof tiles. Today's August 1st. I wanted to film my July reading wrap up today, and it was a pretty good reading month. If you saw my last video, you may have seen that I was a bit down this month, so like taking that into consideration, I still had a pretty good reading month. I did end up reading 9 books, and I'm quite pleased with that. Very good mid kind of range of amount of books I read, which is very, very exciting. I also read my first nonfiction book of the year. I think last year, I don't think I read any nonfiction last year. I definitely have a preference for fiction, romance in particular, fantasy, a little sci-fi. Those are my top genres. But I saw a lot about this book when it first came out, and I was excited to read it. I was nervous to read it, and that book is Careless People, A Cautionary Tale of Power, Greed, and Lost Idealism by Sarah Wynn-Williams. Sarah is a New Zealander who moved to the United States. She worked previously as a diplomat for New Zealand, and when Facebook started getting big, she was looking into it and realized how global this app was going to be, or this social media platform was going to be, and kind of wanted to help them build their foreign policy. Didn't see a whole lot of that happening, but could see how like internationally people were using Facebook to connect. And so she emailed them and asked them for a job, and they didn't have anything available for her. They didn't think it really mattered. A couple years later, like she kind of keeps them on her radar, and they seem to have her on their radar. They ended up reaching out about 2 years after she had initially reached out to them, and they offered her a position as kind of to help them build their foreign policy and improve the app that way. It was a very, for as much as one can enjoy a book about Facebook, it was very well written. I was quite impressed with how she was able to write the story, or like tell her story. It was very all over the place though. She kind of starts like middle of her career with a story of Mark Zuckerberg wanting to, I think they're at a party in Peru, with different heads of state, and she's trying to like go around and find people who want to talk to Mark Zuckerberg, and nobody wants to talk to Mark Zuckerberg. So they leave the party early, and I just thought that was hilarious. Anyway, the way she tells her story, it kind of jumps around a bit. It's also very, which blew my mind. So if you don't know, I'm Canadian, I live in Canada. I know our government isn't great, but we have a pretty decent like social services opportunities available here. There is a mandated or a standard of, vacation pay, sick leave, employment insurance, as I mentioned in my last video, and also parental leave. And it's wild to me. Sarah talks in this book about how she's pregnant, she has her child, and she's continuing to work, and there's no system or services around mandated leave, where in Canada we receive government subsidies for at least a year before we're required to go back to work. And it wild to me. Anyway, I don't feel like I'm explaining this book very well. It was kind of scary, the reach that Facebook had at the time, and also continues to have, but they didn't care. Like, they didn't care about the politics of it when they first started out. They were just an app. They were just a social media platform. They didn't care that they had the reach that they did over the elections in the United States or the like other economic issues internationally. They just didn't care. Like, I've noticed this before. I went to an international college in Australia, and there were a lot of American students that came to this college, and it's so intriguing, and you see it online all the time. I think Reddit in particular, where Americans can be very ignorant when it comes to the rest of the world, and that was very apparent in this book with the heads of Facebook. Anyway, I would highly recommend this book. It was scary to read a little bit. Just the fact that they didn't have any of those policies in place. They didn't really care about what they were doing with the app, how they were like throwing in their lot with certain companies or values, and wild. It was also one of those books that, again, like, I primarily read fiction, and so I did have a little bit of trouble picking it up, wanting to pick it up. It was very good when I was reading it, but I would put it down and I would kind of go, like, I want to read a story. And this was a little bit of a story, but it wasn't as, like, I'm diving back into this book because I love them, blah, blah, blah. So I did have a little bit of trouble with that, but it was good. Highly recommend it. Okay, the second book that I read in July was Pucking Sweet by Emily Rath. If you haven't read this series and you are into romance, hockey, poly relationships, highly recommend it. This is book 3 in the Jacksonville Rays series. I believe book 4 was just published, Pucking Strong, I think, which is an MM romance. This one is following Poppy St. James, who is the PR person for the Jacksonville Rays, the hockey team that this series follows. This book is also, it's technically book 3, but it takes place over the same timeline as books 1 and 2. And it was a lot of fun. I had so much fun with this book. So we follow Poppy St. James, Colton Morrow, and Lucas Novikov. Boy, was it hot. This was actually so much fun. I don't even know. Poppy grew up in a high-class American family. They have very, strict rules about, I guess, how you dress and act and appear in society, which, as a middle-class Canadian, is very wild to me. I think her father works for a lobbying company, or he owns a lobbying company. Her mom is a socialite. I don't think she works at all. And we find out that Poppy broke off an engagement with a man who was really only trying to get into her father's pockets. And she has done really well for herself, but her family doesn't really care for what she's doing as the director of public relations for Jacksonville Rays. They think she could have stayed in elite society and basically been like a wife, which, gross, if that's all you're going to do in this context. And then, obviously, working for the hockey team, she meets all the hockey players and develops a little bit of a crush on Colton, a little bit of a crush on Novikov, but like her and Novikov are always like at each other's throats. But this was a lot of fun. There are, how can I say this without spoiling it? I don't know that you can. Oh, it mentions it on the back. There is an unplanned pregnancy in this, which adds some complications to the story. And then we also find out that Poppy's younger sister is now engaged to her ex-fiance. Drama. It's a lot of fun. This series is so much fun. One of the hockey players deals with some childhood trauma. One of the hockey players deals with some like intense medical history and some medical trauma regarding that. So there are some, deeper themes and deeper, kind of plot lines that go in. It's not just super like light and fun. And obviously Poppy dealing with her ex-fiance, now engaged to her younger sister, and she's trying to stay involved with that without like ruining or breaking up her family. So it was very, very interesting to read and see the dynamics of that. I do love this series. I love this series so much. So I am excited to read book 4, Pucking Strong, which again I mentioned is an MM romance. And I think that one is a marriage of convenience. I'm very excited. Very excited. Okie dokie. The third book I read in July was Heartsong by TJ Klune. I love this series so much. This was book 3 in the Green Creek series, and book 3 follows Robbie Fontaine, who joins the pack kind of halfway through Wolfsong, book 1, and becomes part of the pack, and his family becomes family with Ox and eventually Joe and the rest. And I think this book is my favorite in the series. It starts out and you have Robbie and he's not his like guardian or caretaker, but they're good friends. And I think Ezra kind of takes Robbie under his wing. He's a witch for Michelle Hughes' pack, we learn. And it starts out and I can't explain it. I don't know how to explain this book without spoiling the series, but you need to read it. This series is so good. TJ Klune is so good at like invoking these really like deep emotions and really strong emotions. So like we have the found family, which I'm realizing the more I read this series, I love found family so much. I don't know if it feels like because like growing up it was just me and my mom, and then my stepdad came into the picture, and he has older children that I never lived with, I never grew up with, so I don't know if it was like being an only child, having to like make or like find the friends that really like embraced me. And I feel like as a 33-year-old, I'm like finally gotten that. So I'm a sucker for found family, and I love reading about like people building relationships. And obviously like I love reading about romantic relationships, but there's just something too about like, and particularly in this context, like having your wolf pack, having your pack with you. Absolutely wonderful. But then you also deal with like the trauma of grief and massive changes. We discuss a lot of like amnesia, essentially, like dealing with lost memories, but trying to recognize yourself as the person you were, but you have no recollection of who you were prior to losing all your memories. Speaking of memory loss, The Vow is one of my favorite films. So you get like, you're just dealing with a lot of these like really deep and heavy topics, but you still have that like hope sprinkled throughout the novel, throughout the series, and I love that so much. It was so good. In my last video, I tried to start Brother Song and I was just too sad about it, and now I don't want to start Brother Song because I don't want the series to be over. Oh, my heart. I don't know if I can take it. But it's the last book, and so it's going to be a happy ending, and I know that, but I'm still, I'm afraid. Okay. I'm afraid. Next book. The next book that I read in July was The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy by Brigitte Knightley. This was one of my most anticipated books of the year. I think I was in a weird place when I read it, and I enjoyed it, but similarly to Careless people, I would read it and then put it down, and I wasn't super, like, keen's the wrong word. I wasn't, there didn't feel like as big of a drive to, like, pick it up again. But I had so many laugh out loud moments when I was reading this book. I pre-ordered it, and I had friends visiting when I started reading it. And I like to share when there are funny lines, but I also happen to want to give a lot of context. And so I think I just annoyed everybody that I talked to when it came to this. But this book was so quotable, too. I think I want to try and make a post about all the hilarious lines that are in this novel. Okay, this novel came out on July 8th. Again, Brigitte Knightley. It was originally... No, how do I describe this? This story was rewritten, but based on, or I guess inspired by, a fan fiction that this author wrote. It is a Dramini fan fiction, so for obvious legal reasons, Brigitte Knightley couldn't publish that book or that story as a novel because of the HP IP. So she rewrote the story, and it's a completely different story. Obviously, the very different characters. We follow Osric Mordaunt and Orion Ferrum, who is a healer. He's an assassin, a mercenary, where in the original fan fiction, you've got Hermione Granger, Draco Malfoy. He's an Auror, she's a healer. So you do have similar aspects of fan fiction, the original fan fiction, and you can see very a similar trajectory. In this, I can see where the inspiration came from, but if you haven't read the fanfic, you're not missing anything by reading this book. So, sorry, my mom texted. Hang on. Where was I? You don't need to have read the fanfiction to read this one. And again, this book was very good. It is a duology, and I expected the plot to move along a little bit faster. Osric is suffering from essentially a degenerative disease or degenerative illness, and he has secured Orion to help him kind of find a cure for it. And I think I was expecting a little bit more movement through the story, through the novel for that, and we kind of left off where there's still a lot more to go, a lot more to happen, and I was a little bit disappointed. But it is a duology. There is another book coming out. I don't know if it's been written or if there is a publication date at this point. I don't think there is, because obviously this is such a new book, but I'm very excited to read the finale. And I think I am very much I'm a chronic rereader. I love rereading novels. So I'm looking forward to getting the sequel so that I can reread this, and I think I will enjoy this a lot more on my second read. I think I will enjoy it a lot more on a reread, now that I have a little bit more, obviously, context around what this story is, which again is quite different from the fan fiction, and I adored that fan fiction. Anyway, we're doing well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books left. The 5th book that I read in July was called Taint by S.L. Jennings. I picked this book up, so my husband and I, in May, drove across Canada to visit our family, and on our drive back, we stopped in. I'm very sorry if you can hear construction-y noises. I'm going to keep recording this, because if I don't record it, I'm not going to come back to it. But as I mentioned, there's people doing roofs. There's a skid steer driving around because they're putting grass in down the road. I apologize. Please keep watching. So my husband and I drove across Canada in May, to Ontario and then back to Alberta where we live. And we stopped in Regina in Saskatchewan on our way home. And we had our dog with us, so we took him to the nearest dog park that was closest to the hotel where we were staying. And across the road from the dog park was a little free library. I love little free libraries. If I see one, I have to go check it out. I know a lot of people put not great books in there, or a lot of the self-help books or whatever. Anyway, I found this novel, which in my opinion has a very unfortunate name. It's called Taint. But it is not referring to any body parts. It's taint as in tainted. I'm going to taint you with my bad whatever. Anyway, this novel follows Justice Drake, and he basically runs 6-week sex seminars for rich women whose husbands are all cheating on them, and either their husbands sign them up or they sign themselves up to make themselves more appealing to their husbands so that their husbands don't cheat, which, it's not their fault that their husbands are cheating. It's their husband's fault, but that's a different problem. So he runs these essentially sex retreats to just help with their confidence and their sex appeal. He's not actually sleeping with any of these women until he meets a woman who comes on his most recent retreat. Her name is Ali, and takes a liking to her. She is also trying to figure out herself. She knows that her husband is unfaithful. She knows kind of half the stuff that he's doing when she's not home, or he's, going out on a business trip or whatever. And so she's trying to like reconcile how she feels about her husband, but also now how she's crushing on Justice Drake. I mean, it was fine. There was nothing overly exciting about this book. Again, I picked it up from a little free library. I'm very glad I didn't spend any money on it. And I've lent it to a friend, but it will be going back to a little free library. It was fine. He was just a very, like, obviously he's leading these seminars. He's a very cocky man. Very arrogant. I don't even think he's arrogant. Just so sure of himself and, like, full of himself. And, but then it was interesting to see how the author wrote that he was, he's falling for one of his attendees, and he doesn't really know how to stop it. Because he wants a friendship with her, too. But he's crushing on her, and she's crushing on him, and... Anyway. It was okay. Next book I read in July, this was book 6. Bunny. I've named all the rabbits in the neighborhood Frank, and I don't even think he's a rabbit. I think he's a jackrabbit or an Arctic hare. They're a lot larger, really long legs. Long legs, big ears. The 6th book that I read in July was Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. I love Ali Hazelwood so much. This was a reread for me. I purchased this book last year, and I read it last year, and I enjoyed it. She does open this novel with an author's note that essentially says that Not in Love has a very different tone as compared to the rest of her novels. It discusses like the fallouts from grief, food insecurity, child neglect, etc. So thematically, it is quite a lot heavier than a lot of Ali Hazelwood's other novels. I loved this book so much more on the reread. I think part of it helped too, like I've been feeling kind of down. So when Rue Siebert is the FMC, and then we also have Eli Kilgore as the MMC. It is a dual POV novel, and I enjoy those a lot. I really love when you see the conversation happening from one perspective, and then kind of the fallout or the after effects from the other person's perspective, and I enjoy that a lot. But I think part of it too, because I've been feeling so crummy lately regarding work, it felt more real to me, the issues that Eli and Rue have dealt with in the past, and they're kind of still dealing with the after effects of these issues. So we find out about Rue as a child that I think her father left her family, and then her mom was kind of working sporadically, but never really was able to hold a job consistently. And so Rue and her younger brother sometimes would go days without food. And summers were the worst because they couldn't get lunch at school. They had to figure out, how to eat. And that really hit me. Like, I've never had to deal with that. But it was intense the way that it was written. And like it stuck with me. Now she's grown up. She is a doctor. She's working for a biotech company. And the project specifically that she's working on is to help increase the longevity of shelf-stable produce. So she's working on I think she calls it like a biofilm to go on produce, just to help make it last longer, so that people like her, who grew up like her, who only ever ate processed foods because you never knew when your next meal was coming, can buy healthier foods, and it will last longer. I read this book for my double booked book club. If you are interested in watching any of those videos, we have 2 episodes up at the moment. Episode 1, Crystal and I discussed Shield of Sparrows, and episode 2, which was published on August 1st, today, we discussed Something Wilder by Christina Lauren. So feel free to check those out. I will leave the link to that channel down below. So this was the next book that Crystal and I read for our double booked book club, as well as another book that I will be discussing momentarily. But yeah, like I said, I enjoyed this a lot more on my reread, and I'm just a sucker for Ali Hazelwood, if I'm being completely honest. I love her. I love the writing. I know people who are actually in STEM may not agree, or probably don't agree with how Ali Hazelwood portrays the industry, but I, as someone who is not in STEM, as someone who's currently not working, I really love being able to see how these women are stepping up and empowering themselves in that industry, and it makes me really happy to see just women succeeding in life and in love. Another drinky drink. The next book that I read in July is called A Court of Tangled Flames by Theladyofbloodshed. This is an ACOTAR fan fiction. I think I've spoken about fan fiction on this channel previously, but basically there's a website called Archive of Our Own where people can publish their own stories about or based off of book series, TV series, movies, etc. So this one is based off of A Court of Thorns and Roses. This fan fiction takes place during A Court of Silver Flames, and it is a diversion. So if you have read A Court of Silver Flames, when Cassian and Nesta are going on their big hike, because of reasons, they continue on their hike and find a resolution. In this novel, Eris Van Sarah, who is the eldest son of the High Lord of the Autumn Court, he sees Nesta and Cassian going on this hike. He sees how much she's suffering, and so he rescues her from that situation, essentially, with her consent, which is very important. And it was a really interesting take on the story, I found. If you know anything about, and I don't even know a lot about ships in communities, but I see this a lot, this Nerys ship in particular, but Eris Van Sarah doesn't have a very large role in the series as a whole, and so I thought it was really neat to see how Theladyofbloodshed, this author, took this very, very small minor character and made him into the MMC of this story. It was really cool. Like it's essentially, he rescues her, he takes her to the Autumn Court, keeps her in hiding with one of his really close friends. But then we have a marriage of convenience, I think is what it is. If they're not married, she will essentially be deported, or it could start a war, so they get married, but there's no affection there, there's no romance, and they're just trying to figure out how she can survive in the Autumn Court without losing her life, pretty much. It was a wonderful story. Anyway, I really enjoyed that fan fiction. It is available to read for free on AO3. I don't believe you need an account to read it, but some authors who post on Archive of Our Own lock their fan fictions so that you do need to have an account created. You need to be logged in to be able to read these fanfics. But if you are interested and you enjoyed the ACOTAR series, but want a different ending for Nesta's story, this was a really, really good one. Very, very good one. Okay, 2 left. The second to last book that I read in July was Whispers of the Deep by Emma Hamm. I was first drawn to this novel, I think it was an advertisement that I saw on Instagram or Facebook or something, and it just had one, kind of spicy line in it that was very intriguing to me, and so I found it. I found a copy and I read it, and the story was not bad. This story follows a human. Her name is Mira, and all the humans on Earth basically live in the ocean. I guess there's not a whole lot of detail given, but essentially climate change has gotten so extreme that the Earth has, land is basically uninhabitable. There are storms constantly, a lot of volcanic eruptions that are happening on a regular basis. So for humans to continue to survive, they've moved underwater. And they live in these big, dome communities, these underwater communities. And Mira herself lives in Beta, which is a city that has a lot of engineers. They're the ones that fix all the problems when it comes to their systems and ops within these underwater communities. We don't know how many communities there are. There's Alpha, which I think is more high society. There's Gamma, which I believe is kind of like their police force or their law enforcement, I think. But they live underwater. They all live underwater. And then we also, and it's this novel is dual POV. So we get Mira, the human, and then Argus, Argus, Arges. I don't know how to say this. I'm just going to call him Argus. He is a merman, essentially. And he is one of the leaders of his people, the people of water. They're trying to break down the human communities because by having built these domes, these underwater cities, they've killed all the sea life around them. It doesn't mention that there's active pollution, like I don't believe they're dumping their waste into the water, but in order to have built these communities, they had to remove a lot of the underwater aquatic plant life. So Argus and his people aren't happy. He develops an infatuation with Mira. Again, she's part of the engineers, so their first encounter, she's fixing a crack in one of the walls, and he sees her from outside, she sees him from inside, and she manages to escape before he, like, knocks down the wall. And then they encounter a second time where him and his, like a group of his people are attacking Beta, and he somehow gets into the, like one of the airlocks, and she's also there, and they kind of have a mutual unspoken agreement because she speaks English and he speaks his underwater language, which apparently sounds like whales, how whales sing, but they can't communicate with each other. They don't understand each other. So she finds a way to get them out, and then he finds a way to get them back in so that she is safe. Their third encounter, she's fixing an external part of Beta, and he kidnaps her. And obviously it's a romance, so things ensue. I was expecting this to be, like, again, the advert that I saw, and I had taken a screenshot of it, but I think I've deleted it. I've lost it now. Haven't had it recently. But it sounded a lot spicier when I was first kind of getting into it, and I want to say none of the spice happens until like 75% through the novel, which I was a little bit bummed out about because that's the point of these books. Yeah, I hadn't planned on reading. It's a series. I think there are four novels in this series as well. Yes, 4 novels and a prequel. So 5. I think that's a novella. Yeah. I wasn't planning on rereading the next book, but the ending, sounds so good. They end it on, it's not even a cliffhanger, but they start kind of discussing the plans for the next book, and now I'm like, I need to read it at some point. What a bummer. I wasn't going to, and now here I am with 3 more books to add to my list. Alrighty, and then the final book that I read in July was Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. This book, I think I read this in 2 days. I did. I read this in 2 days. Started July 28th, ended July 29th. I think this might be my second favorite Ali Hazelwood book after Deep End. Deep End is my all-time favorite Ali Hazelwood book. This book is, so again, Crystal and I, for our double booked book club, we read Not in Love and Problematic Summer Romance, and we'll be recording that episode next week, which I'm very excited about. Problematic Summer Romance is a sequel. It is the sequel to Not in Love. You can read it as a standalone, but it follows Maya Kilgore, who is Eli's younger sister, and Connor Harkness, who is Eli's business partner. And we are introduced to both of those characters in Not in Love. So you kind of need a little bit of, like, reading this to get the initial context. Again, it is a thematically very different book to what Ali Hazelwood normally writes. This one is a lot heavier. This one was a lot lighter, but it was so much fun. This book, so again, we have Maya and Connor, and Maya's 23 in this novel, and Eli is 38. So there's a 15-year age gap, which leads to the problematic summer romance. But it was, this book was so much fun. I have realized, so my husband and I have been married for just over 5 years. We've been together for over 6 years. And like, this book made me miss dating. I obviously am very, very pleased to still be married to my husband, but I miss a little bit of the, like, getting to know each other phase of our relationship. And this book brought me back to that, and it was so much fun to read. And like the pining, oh, and the yearning, oh, it was so good. It was so good. Again, I know a lot of people don't love Ali Hazelwood. She's very tropey, but she's so much fun. Maya is also a scientist. I think she's a physicist. It's mentioned that she does a year internship or something in Switzerland with CERN, which is really cool. Connor was also in STEM, and it's kind of their backstory is explained. Eli, Connor, and their group of friends is explained in Not in Love. But yeah, I loved it so much. This book also takes place in Italy. I've never been to Italy, but Ali Hazelwood is Italian, so she knows what she's talking about. And like, it just sounds so beautiful. It's so much fun. The summer descriptions, just the way that things are happening in this novel. I love Ali Hazelwood so much. Yeah. I don't know what else to say about this novel. Again, very, very quotable. I read it on my Kobo so that I can highlight. I'm working on figuring out a way to feel okay about writing in my books, and I'm not quite there yet. But this book was also very quotable. Very funny too. A lot of these highlights were from chapter 1. When Maya gets picked up from the airport in Italy by a driver, she's picked up with another friend who I believe works with Eli and Connor. Her name is Avery. So she's introduced, and obviously Maya has been in love with Connor for years, and we learn that Avery is Connor's ex-girlfriend. So she's introduced, and she says, "Hi, I'm Avery." And Maya's internal monologue, "I don't say I know because it would come across as chilling. Like, I'm the kind of person who invests huge chunks of her time online stalking her crush's girlfriend to find out ultimately insignificant things about them. It's exactly the kind of person I am, of course, but I will attempt to bring it to my grave." Oh, just funny. Like, this is a single POV, so Maya's inner monologue is really hilarious. Like, just hilarious. I really love the way that Ali Hazelwood writes her characters. I love the way she writes her stories. I love her. If I could meet Ali Hazelwood and just give her a hug, I would, in a very non-creepy way. Anyway, well, there you have it. 9 books read in July. Very good. Again, it ended up being a pretty good reading month. If I had to pick a favorite, Heartsong. Heartsong is my favorite, hands down. Heartsong, and then Problematic Summer Romance, and then Pucking Sweet. It ended up being a really good reading month for me, despite feeling down about work stuff. If you want to follow me on the Storygraph to keep up with what I am reading, I will leave the links down below for that. Please feel free to give me a follow or add me as a friend on the Storygraph. I'm always looking for, new people to interact with. I love books so much. And you can also follow me on Instagram and TikTok. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching. I would love if you could leave me a comment down below about what your favorite book of July was that you read this month in July. I'm always looking for new suggestions, new recommendations. I will be building my August TBR soon, because I haven't done that yet. And I'm always looking for new suggestions, so I would appreciate anything you might recommend. I think that's everything. Again, thank you for sticking around, and I will see you next time.